Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. The Hill's unbiased news and analysis on policy and politics is delivered straight to the halls of Congress with unparalleled engagement in the Beltway and beyond. Amid a deeply partisan government where Republicans control all branches of government, veterans issues are one of the few bipartisan issues left in Washington. From enterprise reporting to breaking news to live events, The Hill stays on the pulse of what's next for our soldiers. Welcome to The Hill's Veterans Voices Summit.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Hill's third annual Veterans Voices Summit. My name is Bill Salmon. I work for the Hill. I am not a veteran, but I'm the son of a veteran and the dad of a veteran. I'm not sure that quite counts, but my dad lied about his age to enlist in the Navy and fight in WW2. And he served on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. One of my sons enlisted in the Marines. He was a combat Marine in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Closest I ever came to even seeing combat was I spent a couple of years as a war correspondent for the Stars and Stripes newspaper, covering our military overseas. And the thing that afforded me was the opportunity to become embedded with our brave servicemen and women as they were deployed across Bosnia and Iraq. And I really came away with an even deeper respect and admiration for those who wear the uniform. Because, you know, that's one of the great things about the U.S. military. It's still one of those institutions, increasingly rare institutions, that commands nearly universal respect and admiration. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Americans broadly support our military community and their top priorities, whether that be employment, whether that be access to health care, whether that be suicide prevention, which sadly remains a very serious issue, because a lot of our military families are under a lot of stress, right? I mean, in addition to deployments, they've got many other things to worry about. Most recently now, this government shutdown. I guess, what is this, day 37 of the government shutdown, which is now officially the longest in our history. So that's yet another concern that they have to sort of think about. Is my next paycheck going to be there? Is the following paycheck going to be there? So we'll get into some of that today. We're going to get into a lot of these issues. We'll talk about some of the benefits, starting with the basics, like which veterans initiatives and benefits are the top priorities for the Trump administration. And then, we may get into some of these specific benefits and unpack them. There's one that I think we're going to talk about, the expanded VA benefits under the PACT Act. Of course, it has to do with burn pits and so forth. And the question is whether those benefits will be rolled back or whether they'll be allowed to remain. So we're going to find out in today's Veterans Voices Summit. Again, I thank everybody who's here in the room. I want to thank everybody who's watching online. We do encourage everybody to follow along the social media conversation on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, using &TheHillEvents and hashtag #TheHillVeterans. Let me repeat that. &TheHillEvents, hashtag #TheHillVeterans. With that, let's get this program started with a couple of very special people. One is my friend and colleague, Mike Viqueira, who happens to be the Washington bureau chief for NewsNation. The other is Republican Congressman Jack Bergman, himself a Marine Corps veteran. He's from the great state of Michigan. He also happens to be the chair of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. So let's give a very warm welcome to Mike and Congressman Bergman. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Congressman, if you
Morning,
would
everybody.
Okay. Congressman, you were just telling me, I know you live and you're from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I think everybody would like to be there this time of year to see the beauty, the natural beauty there, but a very special event coming up in 8 days.
opening of deer season.
There you go. I'm sure that's almost a national holiday, at least a UP holiday up
Well,
there.
it is. It truly is. The young boys and girls who are in high school in the UP, they're not required to go to school on opening day.
Is that right?
They won't get docked. My cousin, who was a career civics teacher up in Houghton, Michigan, used to say, November 15th is not a holiday. You are required to be in class. But if you're not here, and there was some really nice venison to show up on my desk a couple of days later, your grade will not be affected.
So that's the equivalent of a UP note from home.
Pretty much.
Well, that's great. Okay, you have served, as Bill mentioned, over 4 decades in the Marine Corps, rising to Lieutenant General, and now you did chair last cycle, the Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. This cycle, this Congress...
Readiness. I have the Subcommittee on Readiness, which allows me to touch everything, not just ISO, not just, MILPERS, tactical air and land, all of that. So it's readiness. And I've got a great ranking member, John Garamendi.
Sure, from California.
And the great thing about John is, number one, he's the only guy in the Armed Services Committee that's older than I am. Okay, that's number one. But he has a wealth of experience. And think about it, we graduated college in the late 60s, different parts of the country. And we literally put our first service pin, our personal service pin, in that spectrum of life on the left and right lateral limits. I went in the Marine Corps, John went in the Peace Corps.
Wow.
Every other service organization, I would suggest to you, could fit somewhere in the middle. But to serve, and I encourage all of you who have not yet served in some type of way to serve our country. It's not this country, it's our country. Put your service pin somewhere where you want to get involved that will motivate you to do a little bit extra. And by the way, you can have so much fun. And if you're a curious person, like I am, your eyes will be opened in ways that you never would have imagined. But take the step at whatever age you are.
Amazing. I've never really heard that perspective. Peace Corps, Marine Corps, and everything in between. So what is carried from your military background into your legislative role? What motivates you today when it comes to Veterans Affairs and National Security?
Well, let me just say on the front end, my dad was drafted at the age of 33 in 1942. Okay? Think about that. Because the country needed people to step up. He served in the South Pacific as a sailor.
How old was he, you said?
He was 32 at the time. Okay, right at the top edge, because they needed people.
Sure.
My mother was a Minnesota farm girl. Even though my dad was the sailor in the Navy in the South Pacific, my mother, the farm girl, had the vocabulary of a sailor. So if you think about some of the words I might use, credit my mother.
All right.
But my motivation still to this day, whether it's obviously my uniform service is over, hence I have facial hair. Okay. But to serve in whatever shape or form, no matter what committee, but especially on Veterans Affairs and Armed Services, I want to be part of that thread of service from first of all, on the recruiting end. Any soldiers in the crowd? What's the worst slogan ever in the Army? Bingo. The Army, be all you can be, was the best recruiting slogan ever. Then they went to be an army of one, and you go, wait a minute, we're teamwork here. By the way, number 3 grandson is a firstie at West Point, a future Army second lieutenant. But when you think about to serve in uniform, to transition to civilian life, to get yourself from the Department of Defense into the Veterans Administration, and complete then your next steps in life with the support that you've earned, as long as I'm in Congress. And by the way, in case anybody's wondering, there's no end game. My wife has said, you look like you're actually getting something done, and you're enjoying working with people. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I really don't. You got to vote, and we take some hard votes, and we need to make sure that we do the right thing for all the veterans and their families. But the only way to do that is to make sure the effort on the front end, the honesty in recruiting, through the training, through the readiness, through the deployment, through the fight, through the transition back to civilian life, and the transition into the Veterans Administration is complete is not, smooth is not a good enough word, but with the advancement in technologies we have today available to all of our veterans and their families to engage online, well, shall we say?
I want to, you talked about votes and you talked about transitioning, and I know that you had an op-ed in The Hill, our newspaper, our publication, talking about a vote that on your measure that happened back in committee a few months ago, the Choice Act, passed by one vote from the committee. It's somewhat controversial with veterans groups. As a matter of fact, in the op-ed, you particularly mentioned the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and their opposition to the bill. Could you give us a little background on exactly what's happening with the bill and your response to some of the criticism from the veteran service organizations?
Sure. By the way, I'm a life member of the VFW. Since when I got back from Vietnam, my dad signed me up, and his Christmas present to me every year for about 12 years was to pay my VFW dues. And then in 1984, he said, I'm sick of paying your dues. I'm just going to buy you a life membership. And what he didn't tell me was he wouldn't make it to the next Christmas. Okay? So my passion for the VFW, I'm also a Legion member, and I pay more dues to local, veteran service organizations. The point is, we are a country of individual freedoms. Those freedoms have been fought for. And for the government to limit a veteran's freedom to choose who they want to do their claims, to do their paperwork, I believe is counter to the American ideal. The veteran needs to be able to have the choice to choose. What the government is supposed to do, especially the Veterans Administration, is make sure those who do those appeal work and claims work for the veterans are good, honest actors. So the Choice Act preserves the freedom for that veteran to make their choices to who they want. And if they want to pay money for it and are okay with that, great. But it also creates the environment and the specifics to hold bad actors accountable and the VA to accredit people. And if you're not accredited and you're not doing the right thing for the right reason, you can't do it. But that's the Veterans Administration role, is to provide that top cover for the veteran to make sure they're not getting hit by a bad actor. So that's what the Choice Act is all about. I'm not going to support anything anywhere that limits an individual's freedom in our country. I don't care whether it's a veteran or not. So to me, it's not a thing where you've got the VSO against, if Jack's Mighty Fine Claim business was doing a good, honest business. Tell you what, I've got some spectacular companies that have come into our office and sat down, and I've grilled them, still will. What's your plan? What do you serve? How do you serve the veteran? But remember, the Veterans Administration is supposed to serve the veteran, not serve itself.
I'm going to keep moving here. We just have a little bit of time, but another one of the issues that you're out front on is the use of psychedelics to treat PTSD in veterans. I'm sorry, you probably get asked this all the time, but how does a 3-star Marine general
who's never taken a drug in his life
come to support...
Unless beer, just so you know.
How does a 3-star Marine general former come to support the use of psychedelic drugs for veterans?
Yeah. It's a great. Thank you for the serious question. Sometimes we sit in these forums and we don't get very serious questions. I looked at getting involved in alternative therapy research for probably 2 years before saying yes. But number one, we still have a way too high suicide rate among our veterans. Number two, when I did my research, we have not had breakthrough therapies in medicine, especially in mental health, since the 50s. We've become a pill society. And I'm not going to mention the Sackler family, but you all know the history, okay? When we had to treat for pain as physicians, we lost is part of the edge of doing the right thing for our people who were under severe mental stress. So once I looked at the battlefield and our veterans and their families, it's not just the veteran, it's the spouse, it's the children who are suffering from those stresses as well. So that's what convinced me to look at, is there a better way to do this? And that's why we are doing everything we can to provide the monies to encourage the Veterans Administration to do research along with other entities, to working with the FDA and those to do the breakthrough therapies of the next generation, of the next millennium for mental health. Because guess what? If it works for veterans, it's going to work for other people too.
One of the biggest issues for many veterans is the knowledge and skills they acquire in the military and translate that to meaningful civilian roles, especially those with intelligence and special operations backgrounds. So what do you think is needed, what needs to happen to help with that specific subset and veterans as a whole?
Well, here's again, it's a great question, because what does life after uniformed life look like for veterans? Do you realize that roughly only 10% of the veterans served 20 years or more? So you're looking at a population of 90% of the veterans who come, they might serve one enlistment 4 years, they might serve 8, 12, 14. I've got the numbers breakdown. But as we look at the age of a veteran and how they're going to transition from the military to civilian life, the average number, here's a data point, now this is probably 7 or 8 years old, but if you serve 20 years active duty and you retire and you start a new career, which you're going to because your spouse is going to want you out of the house, okay? That's just the way it is. You will go through an average of 5 career changes before you stop working. So let's say you retire, you enlist at 18, retire at 38. You've got at least 2 full 20-year careers, you know, or at least 1.5 still in front of you. But 5 is the number of job changes that a 20-year active duty veteran will go through after retiring, because they got used to, in 20 years, you know, in your 20s, your 30s, you got used to a certain way, and in the civilian world, there's no plan of the day that tells you what to wear to work. In most cases. Some cases, yes, but not in every case.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up with a broad question for you. What do you hear most often is the top concern, as a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, from your veteran constituents?
The delay in being able to everything from get an appointment, the delay from being able to get an appeal to a claim, the delay. That is the number one. Now, you know who the biggest opponents were to telehealth were before COVID? The veterans themselves.
Really?
They wanted to go see their doctor face to face. Now, we had to go through, everybody had to change during COVID. It's all over, and now the veterans go, man, I don't have to get out of my chair. I can sit here in my jammies and with my cup of coffee, and I can see my doc right here on telehealth. So we need to make sure that we continue to advance the use of the technologies available to provide the health care and the administrative services that the veterans today will be comfortable with and good at. If you're 70 years old, your ability to work online is a whole lot different than if you're 25. That's just the way it is.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you very much for coming around today. I know the House is out. Thank you for being in town. No, we don't want to talk about that.
No. This is, hey, my constituents sent me to the battlefield. They didn't vote for me to have me stay in the UP and hunt deer, although they like to see me on deer hunting. This is the battlefield for any member of Congress. This is where you should be to do your legislative work, and I would suggest to you the one change that we could make and should make, we should have more of our members move their families here like they used to.
Oh my gosh.
So you know one another. Your kids play soccer. You're not a Democrat or Republican on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. You're a mom or dad standing at a soccer field watching your kids play. And oh, by the way, you just happen to start talking about business because it's, you know, the game's a little slow. That's what we need to return to here. Good people getting elected, coming here, working together, dealing with our differences, but in this case, focusing on the veterans, not the bureaucracies.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.